Tec Sounds presents EduTrends.
Hi, I'm visiting Santiago de Chile, the University of Catholic University of Santiago de Chile, and I have the pleasure to be talking to Ricardo Rosas. Hi, Ricardo.
Hi, Pepe.
Ricardo leads Center for Inclusion and Technology here in the university. So I would like to first ask you, when you're talking about inclusion, what are you talking about?
Oh, this is a very good question, indeed. We're talking about inclusive technologies. That is, we are developing a lot of technologies for blind, deaf, low IQ children, autistic children, etc. That will make them to be included without many problems in the regular education, And we began mainly with technologies that help these populations in the reading acquisition process, because this is really the big problem in some of these populations. For instance, the deaf population has really it's very hard for them to learn to read, because reading is a representation of the sounds of speech. And because they don't hear, they have it really hard to grasp this process. And so we developed a technology, a software, which mainly permits them in a very playful environment to have an exposition, a systematic exposition for all the possible possibilities, all the combinations of letters that are typical in a given language, okay? Because all languages are different. And so we developed this software, and is right now the world gold standard for the deaf population for their reading acquisition process. This is one example, no?
Okay.
And so we developed a lot of other things like that.
Very interesting. And so if you continue with this example, what are the results that you have had with this technology for the deaf population?
Oh, we can demonstrate that with this technology, deaf children learn significantly more than without this technology. Because the normal process for the deaf children to learn to read, we have to understand that for the deaf population, to read is actually to speak a second language, okay? Because they don't have the first language from which they can translate their language, because they have only...
Their first language will be the sign language.
Yes, the first language is sign language, and this language is not represented in signs like all other languages, okay? And so when they learn to read, they have to learn a sign and a symbol system that is totally strange for them. It's exactly the same as that we learn to read in Chinese. It's exactly the same. It's very hard for them. Very hard. And this is the reason why the deaf population, even university or college population, or even deaf professors, they can't really write very well or perfect like normal people, typical population.
I understand. And and you're working with other populations. Can you give some other examples of the populations?
Yes, we're working also with the blind population, because blind has another difficulty. In Latin America, in Latin America, Asia, and Africa, blind children use the slate for write. Okay, the slate is an instrument that permits to make a hole in a paper, okay, and so you can read the braille. But the interesting thing is that a blind child must learn to write the whole word without seeing or perceiving it, because the slate is making the holes, okay, all the holes of your name, for instance, Pepe, okay. After that, you have to turn the page and then write from right to left, turn the page, and read from left to right. Mm-hmm. Okay? This is This is an ability that is very hard to have because it implies a working memory capacity that does not have a child with 7 years. You know, when you learn to read, you wrote your name, P-E-P-E, seeing it while you are writing it. The blind child has not this possibility. And so we developed software that make this process very simple. So you can define always to write in reading form and not to write in writing form and then to read in reading form. You understand?
Yes.
And for that you need a software.
So once again, this is a piece of software that you can use to help blind children to learn how to write in Braille.
Yes. And even we developed an app, a tablet app for iOS and Android for teach to read for Down syndrome children. Okay, and we also have tests of that. Down syndrome children has another problem. Okay, they have a very thin working memory capacity. Okay, so for reading, you need an amount of working memory that is an amount of 4 simultaneous things in your brain, okay, to understand the reading process. And Down syndrome children used to have maximum 3 of these bits or bytes of information simultaneously in there. And so you need technology to make automatization processes that permits them to understand the process for the reading to decodification. Because when you learn to write, my dog is hungry. Okay, my dog is hungry. You have to first recognize that this letter M sounds M, and you have to imagine sounding M, okay? And simultaneously, you have to remember that you have the M, and then the Y is I, okay? My. So you say, this word can be my, myself, etc. A lot of words. But if you see a space, you know that this word is my, okay? And then you begin with dog, the same process. But you have always to have a slot in the memory process, the previous word, okay? Down syndrome children usually forget what they are reading. So they maintain always the actual word, okay? And so you need also a software to bring this for them with many games and playing around the words and the representation of the word, okay?
It's like a strength on sort of attention or the process of attention or how it works?
It's more than attention. It's also attention, but it's working memory. It's the possibility to have in your system, in your consciousness, in your actual consciousness, all the sense of what you are reading. Okay, and so you need many slots for this working memory process. And so this kind of things. And a very important thing, all what we are developing, everything, every software or app is totally free. Okay, are distributed for free in the web for the world. We don't have a business model for this. This is our business model. Okay, we apply for big grants or for foundations. We develop the systems and we distribute them for free all over the world.
That's great, and we will share the URL of your lab later, and also in the metadata of the podcast, so that everyone can go there and find what you're doing. Are you mostly using software to help these groups learn? Or are you using other techniques also, like methodologies or objects?
Yes, both of them. Mainly software, because software is accessible for everyone, everywhere. And so we don't need to deliver any other things to them, okay? Software is the easiest. Software or apps, okay? But we have also some kinds of additional objects or features. For instance, we have... we are right now developing finishing the development of a software that permits our minority, Mapuche community, to learn their language, okay? Because we have a big problem. We have about 1 million Mapuche in Chile. This is our Aboriginal population. But they were really very mistreated the last 100 years, so they lose their language, okay? And so we have small communities that maintain the language, but we have a law that states that if there is a school with 20% or more children from this origin, the state is mandatory for them to teach the language, okay? But we have a big problem. Regular teachers does not know Mapuzungun, the language, yeah, and the old people that have the language has no idea on how to teach. Okay, so we developed a software with additional materials, printed materials, that permit them to learn the language. Okay, and also in a playful way, etc. No? And this is we are testing it right now in the south of Chile, and it's very interesting how the children, because they have a lot of words, isolated words from their ancient language, and they are recovering it, okay, with the help of this software, because they are playing with it and etc. No? And this is one example. Another example, we are right now also finishing the design of an haptic pen that is a yarn pen that you can paint with it in a Velcro surface. Okay, so a blind child can paint in a Velcro surface. And this is very interesting too because...
So the yarn is applied to the Velcro, and
yes,
then they can touch
yes,
the figure that they
absolutely
design.
Yes. And this is really this is a world innovation because what they have right now, the blind population, is always diachronic. It's not synchronic, you know. Or they put a slate in a plastic surface so they can paint in a way that they make relief in the plastic, but they have to turn the plastic and then perceive it, or with hot silicone, for instance. Okay, so you can print, but you can't touch it immediately because it's
hot.
It's hot, yeah. And this technology makes it possible to make it really synchronic, so the child can follow what he's painting.
Let me ask you a question that goes from inclusion to other groups. So I think that what you're learning in your experiments, in your research, about the way that the human brain works, you know, those basic functions of the brain, can be applied to the general population. Is there a way of translating that also, or?
This is a very good question. You know, we definitely don't think that all the population learns the same way, okay? Because if you have a sensorial or intellectual difference, it's clear and obvious that you have to adapt the ways of learning, okay? And this is what the software permits you, okay? Technology permits you exactly the same, this thing, to adapt the learning process to the different brain. And this is what we are trying to do. And so, but we also think, and this is the most interesting part of your question, that we also think that children are communicating between them, okay? And so we are always creating technologies that can be used by all the children, okay? Not only by the child that has a condition of disability, but for all the children. So our design, even the software for blind, is really beautiful, you know? So all the children can play with it.
And have you had some results in that area?
Oh yes, of course.
Transfer?
All of this software has empirical research behind it.
Okay, with populations from particularly in Latin America, or?
Yes, particularly in Chile, and with the software for the deaf, the software for the deaf has about 18 different versions from different countries, because I don't know if you know, but
The sign language is different in every country.
Yes.
Yes, I know that sign language of Mexico is not the same.
Yes.
In Spain and Chile, different schools. What is the state of inclusion? If we can talk about that in the world, in the region, how are we managing inclusion?
Okay. This is a very difficult question, because it is crossed by deep ideological assumptions. Okay, and I would say education in the Western world in the last 20 years is moving to a total inclusion and a critical inclusion. When I say a critical, is that it is supposed that inclusion at any price is good, okay? And we think that this is not true. And this is not true for two special cases. The first one is deaf population. Okay, if you have a deaf child from deaf parents, he has a mother tongue that is sign language. Okay, and he is a totally typical child with a normal intelligence, with everything, has a own language. And if you include this child in a regular classroom, he's lost, because he don't understand the language, he don't understand the written language, he will have no friends because he can't communicate with others, okay? And therefore, I think that it's better for deaf population to have special schools with contact, of course, with other children, but not including them in regular classrooms, okay? And I think what I am seeing in the literature and the congresses, that the Western world, mainly Central Europe, is being aware of this point, okay? That inclusion based in the ideology of inclusion is not necessarily good for all the children. The second case is children that, I would say, a general principle. If the child is better in an inclusive classroom, this is good. But this is not better for the child, then this is not good. And for many children, for instance, for children with heavy or very big motoric problems, it's also not so good to be in a regular classroom, because they are considered as the dump of the class, you know. And so this kind of children with cerebral palsy, but heavy cases, they are also better when they're in the classroom where they have pairs, you know. So who is the pair from a student with a big disability? Of course, another student with a big disability, and not a regular student. This is what I would to say. So my answer for your question is, okay, inclusion is good, but not ever, and not for every child.
It's a very interesting point of view, and I agree with you that it's not the case of most of the educational system, where the inclusion means bringing those groups with special needs to regular classrooms. And I understand completely your point of view, and if there's research that backs up the idea of for some of them it's better to be among people that have the same, I would say, condition. Mm-hmm. It's better for the development. But my question here will be, as they are immersed in a society that functions in a different way, how can you balance the development of the individual and then the immersion in a society that uses spoken language, for instance, on a day-to-day basis, or visual signs, or whatever? How can you balance both worlds?
I think it's very hard to balance it, okay? It's very hard. But technology will do this for us in the next 20 years for sure. Okay? Can you remember 5 years ago how lovely it was to use Google Translate? It was a joke.
Yes.
Do you remember that? No?
Yes, that just 2 months ago, I was trying to find a translation from a word from English to Spanish, and I copy and pasted that word in Google Translate, and by mistake, I copied the whole paragraph.
Okay.
And then I realized how good it has become.
Yes, it is perfect. Right now, it is perfect. So from some language to another language, it is almost perfect, okay? And this will be the case with sign language in 20 years. I'm absolutely sure. And when you have it, the problem is solved. Because you will have the possibility in 20 years to interact with people from another languages without the need to have a translator. Because the technology will do that for you in a transparent form. And this is very good because this is the way where people from different languages can have exactly the same access to everything without renouncing to their own languages. This is a beautiful world, you know?
So that doesn't work, but it will be the same for everyone. It means what's the use to learn a foreign language if you can have a perfect translation?
Definitely. But then you will have the knowledge from a cognitive psychologist who will say you, it's better that you learn 2 or 3 languages because your brain will be more complex and you will be more intelligent. Okay, so this is also the case, and this interview in 20 years will be we two speaking Spanish and then all being automatically translated.
With a better accent, I hope.
This for sure in my case.
So your interesting. Your bet is that this will happen. The translation will be available everywhere, and. You touched something that I don't know if you want to go a little bit more in depth on this idea of learning different languages, like muscles for the brain.
Muscles for the brain?
Yes, it's like yes.
Yes,
going to the gym or
no, definitely yes. No. We have a lot of evidence of that. Okay, because a second language, when you really learn a second language, your brain has the double of pixels. You know. Because you can understand 2 senses. Your brain is more complex. You can understand 2 different worlds. So definitely yes. And it correlates with intelligence, and it's very demonstrated that, okay? So a second language is always good, a third language is better, and the 4th language is for free, because when you have 3 languages, the 4th is learned very, very easy, and so on.
Okay. Well, I switch gears and I go to higher education. And have you done some research or experiments on inclusion in higher ed?
No, nothing. We work only with children.
Okay.
Yes, it's only with children. Okay. We don't make any research with higher education. Okay,
there's no program, for instance, here in the university.
No.
For inclusion.
No. Here in the university, there's a very good program.
Okay.
And it's a very big and very important and very good program for inclusion for people with disabilities. And so you have to talk with them.
Okay, great. When you're using technology and apps, sometimes technology is a divide also. How do you think that these people that need these tools should have access to these technologies? If technology is also a cause of division, is another way of dividing populations?
Yeah, this is again a very good question. I would say, technology for the typical or normal population is an aid, okay? It helps you to make your work better. Technology for the population with disabilities is mostly essential. That is, it makes the difference between being or not integrated or included in the society. For instance, the blind population. You have seen a blind for sure. The technology for them is so transparent, so efficient that they use the cell phone or the computer better as the normal population, because they are trained, for instance, in hearing at a speed that you can't hear. So they can read one order of magnitude better than we can. Okay, and so the problem here, Pepe, is not the cost. The problem is seeing that for this person, technology is essential. Okay, they must have technology because this is the tool that permits them to be included in a normal professional or student or whatever setting.
It should be like part of public policies.
Yeah, definitely, yes. Like a wheelchair, an electric wheelchair for somebody with cerebral palsy, yeah, it's essential. It needs this instrument, okay, and also a computer. So I would say, I always say, the resources must be focused on this population and not the typical population, because for them it's essential. If you have less resources, focus on this population and not on the normal population, because the typical population will learn also with playing or with books or whatever.
Thank you. I want to ask you more about the way that you do research and the way that your lab works, because I will say you're a rare animal as a researcher, because most researchers either they do like basic research or applied research or technology transfer, and from what I understand, you are almost in all the spectrum of all that process. So how can you manage to work in all that part with this basic research for entrepreneurship, also spirit in what you do?
Yes, and also with the end user, because in my area, the most important thing is to work from the very beginning with the end user. I don't know if you know this slogan from the disabled communities. They say, nothing about us without us. Okay, and this slogan, I find this slogan is very good. It's very powerful. Yeah, because what they are saying is, please don't be don't patronize us. Don't patronize us, because we know what are our needs. And so in all our projects, the first session is always with the end user. Okay, and then we begin to understand the problem. Okay, and so they say as their needs, we go to the design of the software, and we are always going back and forth with them, testing the prototypes, etc., until we have the final product. And this is in all our products is this flow line, because we never go further with the development if we don't test it with our end users. Okay, and all of the design is full of cognitive psychology. Okay, our theoretical framework is in what the science know at the date of the design on how this particular population learns. Okay, and so the contents and the procedures and all the activities are based on this knowledge, and then we try to bring all this theory in a playful environment. For us, play is the central key. All our softwares are based on play. Yeah? And then when we finish the prototypes, we go and test them and assess if they really make a difference for learning. Okay, and sometimes we have very big and strong evidence, other times not so much. Okay, but we always deliver the product with the given information.
Okay, so for the design phase is never about us without us? Or
nothing about us.
Nothing about us.
Without us.
Without us, and then cognitive psychology.
Yes.
Plus
plus high-end technology. We use always the last of the technology and play as learning.
As a way of engaging.
Yes.
Say. Okay.
Ways.
And then you test the final version of that. But
yes.
The final version in most labs is like a proof of concept or
No,
something
no.
like that.
But
in your case, it's not that. You don't stop there.
No. This is very important. We think, this population needs a very professional, good designed, and products, because the product is from the beginning special, but they need that this specialty looks like a high-end product. Okay, and so we invest in design. Our products must be very, very attractive for children, because they don't have to feel that this is a prosthesis. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because they have a lot of prostheses in their life, and so they don't like prostheses. They like really vivid products.
See, yes, something that is more integrated. In fact, when I hear you about your process of research and design, putting the user at the center as design thinking does, I wonder why don't we do that in general in education? We should always be putting the student in the center when we design something in education. It's not always.
I have an answer for that, because education is by definition patronizing.
Interesting.
Yeah. If you hear more of the children what they want and what they need, they will for sure learn better and more efficient way than the things that we design for them. I will give you a good example of that. We designed a series of inclusive books, okay? And we invited 3 deaf and 3 blind children for this design phase, okay? And we first asked them what story they wanted to have as inclusive books. And they said the three pigs story, okay? Okay, and then we began with the 3 pigs story, and suddenly one blind child, girl, said, "Why are the 3 pigs men?" Okay? And we said, it's not a problem. We can invent a 4th pig girl. And so they invented this figure, and they changed all the story, okay, including this figure. And you don't know how important this was for the story, because the story ended absolutely different, okay? It's the same main story, but the story by itself is totally different, yeah? But it was created by the children, okay? And you don't have an idea how successful this story is between the children, okay? Because it includes a girl, it's more funny than the other story, not so moralistic than the real story, okay? It's really more Latino, I would say, not so Calvinistic like the real one. And they changed them, and they see, and we saw that this story is far more better than the original story. Okay, and so when you have the freedom for change things that are given, you can have also better outcomes.
And you can only have this richness if you include the student in the process.
Of course. And you respect what they are suggesting. We always think that the projects are not our property. The projects are their property. Because we have to transfer them. And we will only be successful with transference if we are sure that our collaborators think that this is a good product, because they know the reality better than we.
Sure. So what you're saying is something that goes beyond inclusion, in my opinion, is something that we have to learn from you and your team on how to take into account the students, make them part of the process, don't patronize them, and have a more open environment for education, for the design of the activities that will be richer at the end if we include the students?
I hope so, because we learned a lot of these children, and I think we have to hear more at them than we usually make.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. Do
You're
you
welcome.
want to share a place where they can look at what you're doing, your work of your lab?
Yes, the web page, you can visit our web page is cedeti.cl, CL from Chile.
Okay,
Okay.
great. Thank you and congratulations for your work.
No, thank you very much for the invitation.
For more information, visit observatory.tech.mx/EduTrends podcast. Thanks to Tecnológico de Monterrey and the Tec Sounds team. Tec Sounds producer, Miguel Mejia. EduTrends producer, Esteban Venegas and Christian Guijosa. Post-production, Max Perez. Stay tuned for the next episode of EduTrends and visit Tec Sounds in your favorite podcast app for other great shows and content.